Welcome back to Voices Between, the podcast where we try to take the written wisdom of Spiritism and, bring it into the airwaves.
We're trying to bridge that gap between these incredible older texts and the complicated reality of our daily lives.
It is so wonderful to have you with us. Today is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026.
And it is always a pleasure to be here and to be on this journey with you and everyone listening.
Today we are continuing our deep dive into a book that has become, I think, a staple for so many of us. I'm talking about Our Daily Bread, or O Pão Nosso in the original Portuguese.
By the Spirit author Emmanuel, of course, psychographed by Francisco Candido Xavier. It's a true classic in the Spiritist library.
It really is.
Emmanuel's essays are they're designed to be short, digestible, but they're so incredibly dense with meaning. They're not just theological ideas. They're almost like practical manuals.
Yeah, for how to view the world and our place in it. Exactly. And today we're looking at chapter 93. Now, I have to be honest with you. When I first saw the title of this chapter, I sort of braced myself a little bit. It's titled The Gospel and the Woman.
It's a title that carries a lot of weight, doesn't it?
It really does. And usually when you see a religious text from, the 1940s discussing biblical texts from 2,000 years ago with a title like that, you expect something.
Dated.
Dated is the word. Maybe a lecture on domestic duties or something. But this chapter is something else entirely.
It's a powerful reframing of history.
Okay.
I think for anyone who has struggled with the historical view of women in religion, or specifically in the Bible, this is going to be a very, very illuminating discussion.
Absolutely. So, as is our tradition here, before we start pulling it apart and analyzing it, we want to experience the text exactly as Emmanuel wrote it.
To preserve the spirit of the message.
Right. So I am going to read chapter 93, The Gospel and the Woman, in its entirety. No summaries, no skips, just the text.
Let's listen closely.
In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Paul, Ephesians 5:28. Many times, the apostle of the Gentiles has been accused of being too severe toward the feminine element. In certain passages of his letters to the churches, Paul proposed austere instructions which were, to some extent, shocking to some students. Few disciples could perceive in his energetic words the mobilization of the resources of Christ so that the defense of women would be strengthened, as well as to her corresponding higher qualities. The true feminist movement actually started with Jesus, not the one which puts in the hands of its followers the flags of political ideologies, but that which leaves in their hearts lofty and holy directives. During the strictest religious times, such as that of Judaism prior to the Master, women were no more than captive merchandise doomed to enslavement. Even great men such as David and Solomon did not rise above the abuses of their day in this respect. The Gospel, however, began a new era for women's hopes. In it, we see the consecration of the Holy Mother, the beautiful conversion of Mary Magdalene, the dedication of Lazarus' sisters, and the faithfulness of the women of Jerusalem who followed the Lord up to the moment of his supreme sacrifice. Ever since Jesus came, we note an increased respect on earth for the mission of the woman. Paul of Tarsus was the consolidator of this regenerative movement. Despite the seeming harshness of his words, he sought to lift woman up from her degraded condition. He entrusted her to man as a mother or sister, wife or daughter, as a close associate to his own destiny, and as a child of God like himself. Jesus was the first feminist.
Wow. Jesus was the first feminist. That is quite the closing statement.
It's a mic drop moment, honestly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think for a lot of modern listeners, putting the words Paul of Tarsus and, feminist or champion of women in the same sentence feels counterintuitive.
Deeply. We're used to hearing Paul described as the guy who told women to be silent in church, right? That's the common cultural perception.
Exactly. And that's where Emmanuel asks us to just pause and look at the baseline. I mean, you can't judge the progressiveness of a statement without understanding the world it was spoken into.
Right. What was the context in that strict religious environment? What was the actual status of a woman?
The text is, it's brutal about it. It says they were captive merchandise.
Doomed to enslavement.
Yeah.
Merchandise. Objects, property. Even the great kings mentioned. David and Solomon, despite their wisdom, treated women as collectibles. So in that world where a woman is property, like a sheep or a table, Paul comes along and says what?
Love her as your own body.
Think about that.
When you put it that way, it's a radical shift. If she is my own body, I can't just discard her. I can't abuse her without abusing myself.
Exactly. It was a protective directive. Emmanuel's arguing that Paul was mobilizing Christian resources to defend women. By changing the definition from property to part of oneself, he was fundamentally elevating her status.
He wasn't enforcing, modern equality as we'd see it in 2026. The world wasn't ready for that.
No, not at all. But he was pulling women out of the category of slave and into the category of associate in destiny.
Associate in destiny. I love that phrase. It implies you're walking the path together, not one person dragging the other.
Precisely.
But okay, let's look at the other huge claim here, that the true feminist movement began with Jesus. Now, I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Jesus didn't preach about voting rights or equal pay.
That's true. And the text makes that crucial distinction. It says, not the one which puts in the hands of its followers the flags of political ideologies. Emmanuel isn't talking about political feminism. He's talking about a spiritual revolution.
A revolution of the heart.
Yes. Lofty and holy directives placed in the heart. Just think about the women at the cross. The text lists them. The Holy Mother, Mary Magdalene, Lazarus' sisters.
They were the faithful ones.
They were. When the male disciples were largely scattering in fear, who was standing there?
The women.
The women. And Jesus rewarded that faithfulness with dignity. He consecrated their hopes. He treated them as direct recipients of his message, which was completely unheard of.
In a time when a woman's testimony wasn't even valid in court.
He appears first to Mary Magdalene after the resurrection. That's not a small detail.
So when the text says Jesus was the first feminist, it means he was the first to recognize the woman fully as a child of God, independent of her social
utility to a man. Exactly. It's a spiritual liberation that has to happen before any social liberation can take root. You have to be seen as a soul before you can be seen as a voter.
That makes so much sense. But here's the thing that always gnaws at me, and I think you can shed some light on this from the Spiritist perspective.
Okay.
Jesus did this 2,000 years ago. He set this standard. And yet, here we are, still fighting for basic respect for women in so many parts of the world. Why is progress so agonizingly slow?
That is the big question, isn't it? And this is where we can connect this text to the broader Spiritist understanding of our planet's journey. We often talk about Earth being a world of trials and expiations.
Right. Which, for anyone new to the idea, is basically that Earth is a school where we learn through difficulty.
A primary school, maybe even a reform school.
Yeah.
But we're moving hopefully toward a world of regeneration, a world of recovery, of peace.
Okay.
And there's a theory, sparked by discussions around this very chapter, that the true equality of women is actually a barometer, if you will, for that planetary transition.
So wait, you're saying we can't actually claim to be in the regeneration phase until women are truly equal to men?
It logically follows, doesn't it? If regeneration is defined by love and fraternity overcoming selfishness and pride, then a society that subjugates half its population, well, it can't possibly be a regenerated world.
That is a heavy thought. It means our treatment of women isn't just a social issue, it's a spiritual milestone for the entire planet.
We don't graduate until we fix this.
Wow.
And that gets to your question about why it's so slow. Why are we still dealing with this primitive mindset? This brings us to a really specific Spiritist concept, the Adamic race.
Okay, let's break this down. We hear Adam and Eve in the Bible, but in Spiritism, it's a bit different, right?
Very different. In Spiritism, Adam and Eve aren't just two individuals. They represent a massive migration of spirits. The Adamic race refers to spirits who came from other worlds that were more intellectually evolved than Earth was at the time.
So these are like transfers.
You could say that. Or maybe deportees is a better word.
Yeah.
These spirits were smart. They understood civilization, agriculture, science, but morally they were still struggling. Prideful, selfish.
Ah, I see. So they were sort of reprimanded and relocated to Earth to help this primitive planet progress, but also to fix their own stuff.
Exactly, a dual purpose. Help Earth progress, but also rectify their own hearts. But here's the catch. They brought their baggage with them. They brought progress, sure, but they also brought their hard hearts.
And that mindset.
The enslavement of women, treating people as merchandise. That is a classic trait of that primitive dominating mindset they brought with them.
That makes so much sense. So the enslavement of women isn't just how things were, it's a hangover from these exiled spirits trying to dominate everything and everyone around them.
Yes, it's the might makes right philosophy. And Jesus came to dismantle that. He came to show them, look, you have the intellect, but you're missing the love. You're missing the respect.
And the rectification process is slow because we're essentially rewriting the operating system of these ancient spirits.
Many of whom are us today.
Wow. Rewriting the operating system. That's a vivid image. It's not just about changing laws, it's about changing that deep, ancient impulse to own and control.
And this connects to another fascinating insight. Let's go
Okay.
back to Paul's quote. He who loves his wife loves himself, and love their wives as their own bodies.
Right.
Okay, think about the Genesis story again. Woman is made from the rib, from the body of man, and where is man made from?
From the dust of the earth.
See the chain. Earth to man, man to woman.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going.
There's a parallel. The feminine element, woman and Mother Earth, nature, both are bearers of life. Both are essential for our existence. And how has that Adamic man historically treated both?
As property, something to be conquered, used, exploited.
Exactly. We extract from the earth without gratitude, and historically, men have extracted from women without true respect. So when Paul says, he who loves his wife loves himself, we can extend that.
He who loves nature loves himself.
That's it.
That is an aha moment for me. The mistreatment of women and the destruction of the planet come from the exact same spiritual root.
It's the failure to respect the source of life. Respecting the feminine element, whether it's the woman next to you or the planet you're on, is essential for our survival, for that shift into regeneration.
You can't have a regenerated world if you're destroying your body, whether that body is your partner or your planet.
It's all connected.
And, speaking of the source of life, there's one more point from the chapter about the power of creation.
Another one.
Well, the text mentions the higher qualities of women. We often look for power in titles or money. But the text reflects on the fact that women have this biological and spiritual capacity to, birth and house a soul.
It's a sacred right, a sacred power. Regardless of whether society gives a woman a CEO title, she possesses a creative power that is undeniable. She's the gatekeeper of life.
And Jesus recognized that. It's a job only they can do. And it's not just biological, is it? It's the nurturing those lofty and holy directives Emmanuel mentions.
Precisely. It's the spiritual stewardship of the next generation.
Yeah.
Think about it. Jesus entrusted the news of the resurrection, the news of new life, to women first. That was not an accident.
He was validating their role as the messengers of life and hope.
Yes.
So when we read the Gospel and the Woman, we aren't just reading a defense of Paul. We're reading a roadmap for how we, as a species, need to evolve.
From the Adamic desire to possess to the Christlike desire to serve and respect. That's a whole journey.
It really is. This has been such a rich discussion. It completely changes how I view those biblical texts. It's not about repression. It's about a desperate attempt to plant seeds of love in a very rocky, primitive soil.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So as we wrap up, where does this leave us? Where does this leave you, the listener, driving your car or doing the dishes?
I think it leaves us with some really important questions to sit with. If we accept this idea that respect for the feminine is a marker of our spiritual progress, we have to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
In what ways do we still hold on to those primitive views, even subtly?
It's easy to say I believe in equality, but do our actions reflect that associate and destiny mindset?
Exactly. Do we view the women in our lives or the earth beneath our feet as things that are here to serve us? Or do we view them as part of our own body?
And how can we apply Paul's directive to love the other as our own body in all our modern relationships, not just marriage?
My suggestion for a contemplative practice this week would be this. Just look at the women in your life, your mother, sister, partner, daughter, friend, and consciously acknowledge them as associates of destiny. Not for what they do for you, but for who they are, children of God.
And maybe extend that to the nature around you, too. Treat it with that same reverence.
Absolutely. They're both vital to the planet's regeneration. And just remember, Jesus was the pioneer of this dignity. He saw the value when the world saw only merchandise.
That is a powerful thought to carry into our day. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through Emmanuel's wisdom.
It's always amazing what we find when we scratch below the surface.
Keep those lofty and holy directives in your hearts, everyone. We'll see you on the next deep dive. Take care.
Goodbye, and peace be with you.